Hello, good morning, everyone. And for those who are watching from other time zones, good evening or good afternoon. My name is Marilyn. I'm the founder and CEO of Customized Training Solutions Private Limited, or CTS. And we are passionate about helping leaders and organizations who are continuous learners and action takers to transform and thrive in all aspects by co creating customized programs with our world class resources. We have served over 3,000 leaders from over 30 countries in different industries, and that includes Petronas, Sony Mobile, ProLife UK, Ayala Group, Chevron, Tencent, Jollibee Foods Corporation, and Shell, to name a few. Experts say that the pandemic will last for the next 3 to 5 years, and this is why we are organizing several interventions, including this interview, to help leaders who don't know how to stay relevant and adapt in this next normal, and those who find it stressful to lead and ensure performance of a remote team, and for those who are actually afraid that they can't keep their team or their business in this interesting situation. So, to be able to stay relevant, continue to lead effectively in any situation, do stay tuned with us with all our interventions, including this interview. And today, it's my pleasure to be able to introduce and to have a conversation soon with A. Garcia. Be Your Incredible Self, or BYIS, best describe Garcia's tenacious attitude with an emphasis in empowering others. With over 35 years of experience, Garcia has navigated her way through domestic violence, privacy, and safety issues, and the mindset to endure personal adverse events in life. She's been teaching BYIS formula, which is applying situational awareness with emotional intelligence to meet your intended outcome, and she has accomplished this through building trust. Sharing her personal testimony has empowered many others in the outcome of applying her BYIS formula. So, without so much further ado, I'd like to bring in A. Garcia. Hello.
Hi, good morning, good evening. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction, and thank you for all the contributions that you've made and the movement that you're creating through this untrial times.
Thank you so much, and it's our pleasure to have you here. And I can't wait for to learn from you in terms of your leadership and your transformation as well, and how we can possibly inspire our listeners or our audience in this conversation. So to start with, the theme of our conversation is will be revolving around leadership and transformation, and basically the first three questions is just for us to have a perspective on where are you coming from, based on your experience. And then the four to six question will be, I would say, the meaty or juicy part of this conversation. And the last two question is your chance to answer Miss Universe questions. So to start with, please share with us your leadership experience and influencers. If you have a favorite leadership styles, and people who have actually influenced you in your journey.
Oh, thank you for that. Well, I'll be honest and start, I guess, with a little humor. And people that have known me for a long time, they'll tell you that I've always been an influencer and a leader since childhood. I used to be teased every now and then, and they would call me the warden. Only because, I believe that structure and organization, since in my genes, I guess, structure and organization is the only way to really produce outcomes and to feel like you were productive. It's insane when you're scurrying around for simple things, say like a pair of shoes in the morning. I mean, it starts in your personal life, and it bleeds out into other areas. Exponentially sometimes. And so growing up, I've always had that leadership approach or style within. So throughout high school, I joined many different groups and were sat on different committees,
Mhm.
volunteered in the community, and just led teams. I'm a strong believer that you know, building trust is how you have and gain loyalty within your team. I would also say that throughout that childhood and teenage years, and applying all that, it's not always easy, because you always have the people that don't like to follow the rules and don't think that there should be anything, and their parents are at home. Why would they deal with their friends who are organized and structured? So I also, at a very young age, was able to deal with how it is when people resist that type of leadership. So it's been interesting, to say the least. I would have to say that some of the elderly definitely had great influence in their influence as it relates to their leadership, whether it was, again, personal at home or at a corporation. For some reason, there were a lot of older individuals that wanted to take me under their wing and try to coach me into having a more subtle approach, opposed to in your face approach, because that was very much my approach. And at times you need to know when you will attract bees with honey, opposed to something rotten. So so with that being said, I've been able to apply that over the years. It does take a lot of trial and error to understand how to establish trust with people, because when you build a team, you have different characters and different personalities.
Mhm.
And so, being on both sides, I've been able to kind of mature to the point where I think before I speak, I think before I respond, and I teach my team to do the same. I've gotten to a place where I'm able to identify who I can leave in the room to represent me if I need to, leave early, or if I have a conflict in my schedule and I need that representation. Um, so, with that being said, I will go into what you asked as it relates to who has been a big influence in my life. So, outside of some of the older individuals that either took me under their wing at the corporations or the many homes I have been in, um, I have training through John Maxwell. I'm not sure if you're familiar with who John Maxwell
Oh,
is.
very much. Is one of the gurus when it comes to leadership, right? One of the person I look into as well when it comes to
Yes.
leadership.
So
Definitely.
I went to one of his boot camps back in 2018. It was 2 weeks out in Miami, Florida. Many breakthroughs. It's a lot of different perspectives and understanding of human behaviors, human responses, and understanding how to get buy-in, opposed and facilitate in the meetings, opposed to spending so much available resources and ultimately wasting time and money and going back and forth. you
True.
know it's about resolving the problems, and coming up with solutions, and being so dedicated that it creates a culture. So, I would have to say that he's definitely one of my bigger influences as it relates to my matured approach.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us your experience. And it's interesting that you started so early. I mean, I used to be very shy when I was younger. So I'm glad to hear that, on your experience or on your side, you're actually started very early with the communities and other activities within your teenage years, right? And I mean, a lot of us do learn leadership from our own experience, like you've mentioned as well, looking up into your previous leaders or bosses that you've worked with, both of course good and bad, right? We have to face that, or we have to experience that, so we will know like what do we want in the future. And I love that we both look up at John Maxwell. He's really huge when it comes to leadership. And again, like the important thing that you really shared, I would say from that, I mean, we're still getting started, and yet I'm getting a lot of meaty sharing from you already. Like, you mentioned how culture is important, because at the end of the day, we work with people, and that includes, being able to adapt in the different personalities that we have, right? Because again, it's when you work in groups, when you work with companies, it's always about working with people, and having that teamwork, that cohesion, that collaboration, to create the amazing culture that we want to have in our organization, right? So thank you for sharing that with us. I'm just seeing, I'm not sure if it's this is a real comment from Rosita, but I'm just acknowledging that. um, and then, so that leads me, I mean, from sharing your experience, right, with us, and like your influencers, and like how long have you been a leader yourself? So, what is leadership for you?
Okay, well, with that being said, I will quote one of John Maxwell's sayings, and that is, because I do abide by it, that is, people do not care how much you know until people know how much you care. And that is a direct quote from John Maxwell.
Mhm,
And when you apply that in real life, you'll absolutely see a shift in loyalty and in trust when
mhm,
you apply caring for other
mhm,
people. Because I think that, for historically speaking, a lot of us have been through something in our life as it relates to work, feeling like
mhm,
we're disposable, we're just a number, it doesn't matter, and again, because that's been a conditioned type of mindset for some of us, um, applying and seeing or experiencing someone that actually cares, it just definitely cultivates those types of relationships. So leadership to me, just kind of as expressed what I did earlier, I believe that leadership also needs to show dedication to the vision, no matter what the vision or the mission is. If they show the dedication to that and they're constantly working towards it and communicating with the team on lessons learned, positive outcomes, some of the unexpected outcomes that take place, I think growing and learning together absolutely shows great leadership. Then people don't feel like it's that upside down pyramid, or just like they're the grunts on the ground. It's again that mindset. It's the perception of that, of the receiver, right? So being conscious as a leader what you're putting out there, so your message and your dedication is received exactly how you expect it or want it to be. So partaking in initiatives and activities with the team is ultimately important as well. Again, that goes back to establishing loyalty. When you have a loyal team, they're not going anywhere. They're with you for the long haul. So I think that, with that, and making decisions considering everyone involved and all possible outcomes, that I think that defines what good leadership is for me.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. And I love what you've shared, actually. And it really shows, like, you're coming from also a perspective of a mother, nurturing, caring for the team, right? And that's part of it. And for us to be able to build that trust for our team, right? We need to have that, like what you've mentioned from the quote that you just shared, and I'm flashing in the screen as well, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, from John Maxwell, right? And that really simply, defines it, or everything. And again, like, these are, I would say, like, I was actually writing an article before our conversation on authentic leadership, and I was talking about what you've mentioned about, how to actually establish this loyalty from your team, right? And again, that's about being able to, build that relationship, that trust, and caring for the people that you work with, and that would, of course, definitely turn out into an outcome that everyone is working for, that mission, that purpose, that results or goals that we all are working for, right? And in our introduction earlier, we've actually mentioned about the next normal, and how, people or leaders around the globe had, challenges as well in terms of how can they adapt working with remote team and all those stuff. So I'm curious to know, how would you define or describe the next normal?
Ha, that is a very loaded question. I believe that there is an unknown about the next normal. Right now, we are currently walking through uncharted territory. We are all going through different changes. We're evolving. We're making history as we
True.
speak.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been so many things and trends. I don't want to say things. There's been so many trends that have been put out there, whether it's on social media, in the news, different data collected, and studies even on human behavior, adaptation, resilience, trauma, different things that's happening inside of people's homes. Right now, mental health and well-being is so on the forefront, and it's more accessible and acknowledged today than ever before. This is, I think, the first time in anybody's life that it's finally something that is acknowledged, and people want to make sure that there is that balance there. I've had this ongoing joke where it's like, we have our whole body is one, so why do we go to the body doctor and then we have a head doctor? Like, we're all connected. And and as you grow and learn and we evolve, we do realize that there is a connection.
True.
Our body will follow our thoughts. Our thoughts will affect our walk, our talk, our immune system, everything. So there is that real connection there between body and mind. So it's finally being put out there, and people are embracing it, they're accepting it, they're acknowledging it. And I think they're trying to figure out how to tap into it. Where and how do you gain that sense of feeling mentally healthy? And what is that true definition? I think that it's a definition that is per individual, because nobody's built the same. So our definitions of our own mental health is going to be different.
Exactly.
So, with that being said, the new norm is, going to take a huge toll on leadership, because leadership is going to have to be able to identify certain things on a personal level with an individual
Mm-hmm.
that they were not able to maybe even figure out or try to figure out in the past, because it was so structured and there's a separate department and you go there, or there might be employee assistance, resources, or things offered through the job, that they can seek outside help for. But right now, it's more about relationships. It's building that relationship, and being able to work with all generations. This is also the first time that we've had so many generations in the workforce at the same time. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody's communication style is different. How do you
Mm-hmm.
respond better? IM, DM, email, text message, phone call. I mean, the list goes on. Even in professional places, they're saying use this app, use that app. We only go on the cloud. There's about 100 platforms to communicate. So I really believe strongly that the new norm is going to be dependent on leadership establishing that culture. If there's not a culture and a structure in place, regardless if they're in-house or at home, it allows too much flexibility, which may become very detrimental to the company as it relates to productivity, as it relates to getting the best out of their employees, and really going back to that loyalty. And how do you give them that balance that is needed throughout the day when they're nowhere in sight and managed by no one but themselves? You don't want to micromanage, but maybe you have somebody that needs it. So it's really understanding, learning, and giving that one-on-one time with each individual, and then the ability to manage the whole team. So it's a lot.
I know it's a lot to take, and I really appreciate you reminding everyone, our audience, for that matter, on like how important it is to, consider that you're actually working with human, and we are all integrated, connected. And I'm glad you've mentioned it because I'm actually currently working on self mastery and understanding myself as well. And like recently I've been like using tools that would help me to be in alignment. And interestingly, in one of the programs that I have attended, she was sharing with us how us as human would have several how would you say that, we are integrated with our, as a human body. We also have our emotions, our breath, our thoughts, our emotions, our inner self, right? So and I and that would say, I would say that, that is one of the silver linings that COVID-19 has brought about in our world today, being able to like, hey, we have to manage and cope, like what you mentioned, managing and coping the mental and emotional well-being of our team. To take that in consideration, mental health has always been a taboo, in most cases in the past, right? But I mean, we have to face that. It's something that goes in our thoughts, in our well-being, in our how we feel and all those stuff, right? And again, like what you've mentioned, we are interconnected as human beings, right? This has always been like a silver lining. It's like, I would say, like a global or a huge change that is actually happening in the world, right? It's a really huge shift in terms of like healing each other, healing ourselves and each other, right?
Absolutely. And I'm going to say another quote from John Maxwell, and he
Mhm.
says that we're in the era of leader shift. So exactly what
Leadership.
you're saying, it's leader shifting. And it's a lot of responsibility, because I think that we
True.
need to, as leaders, just take it up another level, reach a
Mm-hmm.
higher level with our own, mental and well-being within ourselves. Because if we're not good ourselves, we're not how can we lead others to do that? So we have
Exactly.
to we have to walk in that as well. And one of the things that I would like to talk about, or I have two
Mm-hmm.
things I would like to integrate with this.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is identifying triggers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I say triggers, some people think that automatically triggers are all negative, and that's not the case. There's positive triggers as well. And sometimes, and potentially, when people start coming back to work, because this
Mm-hmm.
is still under the topic of the new norm, I want to say that workplace violence is a concern.
True.
You don't know what's happening at home. And when people are coming to work, there are certain behaviors that I think are can be observed, and if reported properly, can prevent workplace violence from happening. And I'll give just a quick example, and that's somebody that may be having a have lives a violent situation at home. They're going to be early to work. They're going to be pounding out work because they're so dedicated, because that's what they can control. That's what they have. That's what they're getting up and going to and having a passion for. And they're going to be the last ones to leave work because they don't want to go home. And those are some of the things that you can observe, and maybe have a poster on the wall saying something about, if you're experiencing stress, or if you're in an unhealthy environment, where you lay your head, there are resources. And potentially, those resources can be provided from the company or the manager or human resources. But it's definitely something to really consider, because other examples that I can provide is just people being short tempered with one another. They've been isolated. Some people love it. And if it's mandatory that you come back to work and now you have to deal with people again, and it's been a while, so you don't know how their mentality has shifted during quarantine, during, maybe even being
Lockdown.
affected, right?
Mhm.
um you know Workplace violence is has already been on the rise, just like domestic violence has been on the rise throughout this entire pandemic. So imagine, people that don't have family or that don't have a huge social influence in their life. And what do you do when you have nothing but time on your hands? It's not always a positive thing. So going back to those triggers as an individual, and then also, as a friend or a family member that you can
Mhm.
talk to this about other people, is that we go through a physiological change when we're triggered. So an example of that is, if somebody says something a little off color and you are shocked by what they say or feel disrespected by what they said, your eyebrows will go down, your eyebrows will go up. It's like, excuse me. It's a change in your tone. It's some sort of physiological change. You know when you're triggered. And, as soon as you feel that, you can, just check the surroundings, check yourself, and think very quickly, what do you want the result to end up in? And that's how you respond to that situation. Now, on the flip side, if it's, a physiological change for the positive, that could be your favorite song. If you hear your favorite song, you have this big grin on your face, you start moving and dancing, and that's something that John Maxwell talks about too, bringing up the energy, getting the energy going, getting people's blood flowing, having again that balance. So if these things can be implemented when it's time to return to the actual dwelling of a job, of a corporation type setting, office type setting, these are the things that leadership needs to consider. Again, coming into this new norm, not knowing where these people are coming from for the past 3 years.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you for giving us those tips. And it's really helpful. And again, it always starts with awareness, with, you sharing about, being able to identify those triggers and being able to balance all this, will be really helpful in terms of how, leaders can actually cope on this. And that leads me to my next question. I mean, we've been talking about, past experiences on leadership, and even like beautiful quotes from John Maxwell on leadership. And we've just before this upcoming question, we've talked about the challenges of, working remotely or being quarantined, and even, the violence within our own home sometimes, right? So but if we were to look into leadership, or like, you've been as well working with corporate leaders yourself, and you've also worked in the past in companies, right? So what do you believe will be the top three problems that most leaders normally face?
Well, I will go off of historical information, and because I cannot predict what will be the three top issues, but leadership, trusting leadership is a definite issue.
Mm-hmm.
People sometimes leadership feels that they have a higher form of leadership, even though they all have the same title and report to the same person. One just has their belief that their opinion is stronger than the other, and there's sometimes a lot of like leadership, um I don't want to say battles, but battles that go on. And one of the other things that I think is an issue is the willingness to adapt to change. A lot of leadership that's a little bit on the seniority side. When I say seniority, more of tenure, like longer term in leadership,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
um, they are not very adaptive to change. If it's not
True.
broken, don't fix
Mm-hmm.
it. Just
Mm-hmm.
keep it the same, regardless, of what statistics may show. They're a little sketchy on being willing to adapt to
Mm-hmm.
change. And then there's the side of, if some leadership is willing, do they have the ability? Do they have the ability to adapt to the change? Because remember, again, well, if, futuristically speaking, adapting to change, not everybody is going to be open to that just because of what's going on during this pandemic. Again, these are triggers. Something's changing again, so it might be a trigger. Um, and I think the third thing that is an issue is confusing age with intellect.
That's
Some
spot
of the
on.
Yeah, some of those younger generations, I mean, they're really, really on it. They have advantages that we did not have and that we still don't have, and they're ahead. They are ahead. And I just think that, the leadership that has been in leadership for some time really needs to take a step back and give this younger generation an opportunity, because I think that it would create a healthy balance.
Wow, that's amazing how you actually like summarize that into three simple words, which is trust, which is again what we have been actually talking about from the start, right? On how we define leadership and how authentic leadership, like I've mentioned the article that I just finished before this conversation, and also like you've mentioned adapting to change. I mean, and now in the last or even in the last 2 years, I would say like where we have faced a lot of changes and it's going so fast, right? Whether it's technological and even how we work um with our team, like working remotely. Last time it wasn't acceptable. I've actually, in fact, before I started my business, I requested my boss to allow me to have like to do work from home because I was still bleeding. Then I just had a miscarriage during that time. But they said like, oh no, no, it's not working for us. We've tried that before with another colleague and it didn't really work. So they feel that it's not really they will not see the same productivity or performance as before. So but now, I mean, like with all the lockdowns and with what happened in the last 2 years, I mean, now everyone should know that working from home is working. I mean, it's possible. And again, change is the only one of the only constant in this world. So we have to embrace it. We have to, you know, to be okay with change, right? And I remember in one of our keynotes in our previous leadership summit, where he said that why don't you create positive things or like make changes as an adventure within your organization, right? So that is really like powerful. And again, confusing age with intellect, as I just said earlier while you were explaining this. Wow, spot on, spot on. Because like traditional leaders have been like, oh, I know all these things already, and that really creates, and that's where we actually have been hearing a lot about the generation like gaps, and how you can actually manage those that are in the older generation, baby boomers generation X or whatnot, to the millennials, because the way they think are like a bit different already, right? And from the start, you've mentioned earlier that you have to work with different personalities, and that also includes the age and then the intellect, and that's part of being having that humility to be able um to change, to learn from others, who no matter what the age is, right?
Right.
And I think that's what's missing out as well. And obviously, we will not leave our audience with like just the problems, and we will probably help them with with the next question on what do you believe will be the important leadership capabilities. Knowing the three top problems that you've shared with us, what will be the important leadership capabilities or skills then that they must have in the next normal to be able to continue to lead effectively?
Well, that's another loaded question. So, and in this particular instance, I would have to put that on either senior leadership or, leadership themselves. They have to want to stay in leadership, knowing these new challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And with everything that has, happened unknowingly to all of us individually, and the unknowing as it relates to the new norm,
Mm-hmm.
I would highly suggest and recommend that, finding the right leadership coaching for a group of leadership
Mm-hmm.
would be highly beneficial, only because if you can find the gurus that have been collecting a majority of the data and the trends with the statistics showing, by taking surveys and doing, market validation, by gathering, the data to say, this is what people are looking forward to in returning to work. This is what people are looking forward to in the next, gen leadership. Um, I think that there should be some probing done, because what was going on before is not going to be effective moving forward. I strongly believe that, and I'm seeing it now, even as some, companies have gradually brought people back. I mean, where I'm currently at in the United States, there's been a few companies, in my area, where they had a mandate for all employees to return, and out of 80 that were supposed to return, like 30 showed up. And it was a problem. They realized at that time they couldn't lose 50 employees at once because they didn't show up, even though it was a mandate. So, what do you do with that? How do you be flexible enough, but still have the capability to lead by saying you can't just do whatever you want? You still need to respect leadership, but
Mm-hmm.
also show that you care enough to have the availability to be flexible and adapt to their needs. Because if you're not going to help or show that you care, you're not going to maximize what you possibly can from your team.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest that, again, leadership attend training by some gurus. And I wish I was one of them, since I'm talking about it, that can effectively coach and teach about human behaviors. And then obviously, if it's leadership in those classes, they'll know how to create a program in house, to have a communication channel and, a reciprocation type of environment for their employees.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I love what you've shared, that the importance of that they have, like, trainings and leadership programs in place with them, or getting the right coach or mentor for this, right? And again, it's all about adaptability and flexibility on being able to work with different types of, of personalities around them, so that they can also, again, in turn, motivate them to do so, right? And so, you've answered my next question as well, in the role of learning and leadership. And I just wanted to know if there's anything more that you'd like to, I mean, along the way, while you were explaining the important leadership capabilities and skills, you've mentioned the importance of having something or leadership programs in place, right? So are there like anything more, like, in terms of um, the role of learning, leadership, and transformation in being able to thrive the next normal? Is there anything more that you actually would like to add, in terms of this?
Absolutely. Because leadership are also decision makers and money spenders, with healthy budgets, I would also highly recommend that they start, corporations and, small businesses, if the resources are there, but to provide certain things as it relates to a wellness program.
Mhm,
There can be a life coach, an in-house life coach that is,
mhm,
available. That's a third party. They're not hired as an employee. They're just an outside consultant that allows employees to have a safe place, perhaps for a mental health hour or day or whatever it
mhm,
is. Somewhere safe that an employee can talk about something. I think that is something that would be a great addition. Also, maybe if they have, a yoga instructor that would come out, once or twice a week, just so they have it for a lunch period. And sometimes what I see that's really healthy too is when corporations have like a cafe or a deli
Mhm.
that's just really full of power foods, energy foods, all the healthy things that keep your, mind and your body absorbing the right nutrients for the appropriate energies. So
Mhm.
I think that there's a lot of different wellness type approaches that can be implemented or rolled out into a program that can definitely help create that culture of balance and caring.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a great tip for everyone, right? Let me just, I'm just actually typing it out so that we can share the summary in our notes. I hope I got that correctly. You've mentioned about, training them around human behaviors, action responses, which you've also shared in your tips about, being aware of the triggers earlier. And now you've also shared, like, this is like, I believe one of the topics that I've been always hearing a lot as well on wellness, well-being programs. And again, it can impact, like what you've said, the culture of balance within the organization, which is really like, what leaders should aim for, right? Because
That's right.
when people have the right culture in the organization, or then you can actually also have that balance, that the increase in profitability and productivity that you're looking for. Because a lot of times most leaders are just, so focused around that, and yet they don't see that, like, what are the things that we must do to be able to, like, look into that, right? And so that's the answer. You already gave us the answer just now. And so I really appreciate all the, key takeaways that you've been sharing with us. And that's really a lot, I would say. From the start, we are already a lot getting so many juicy things from you. And so that would lead me now to my last two questions. This is very interesting because I would say these are very open questions that you can think about and that you can, respond on. So I am curious to know if you have a magic wand that you can use. What will you do with it?
What would I do with it if I had a magic wand? I would create that structural environment in
Mhm.
all corporations across the world so we could all feel like we are living at our highest, because I think that everybody deserves it.
Definitely. I love that. I really wish that you have a magic wand. But even if you don't, I would say that what you do now, with the work that you do, inspiring, motivating, and helping organizations or even like individuals at your capacity in, creating that environment, is already like, even without the magic wand, you already have that, right? You've been
Oh, thank
already
you.
like creating that healthy environment possible that you've mentioned. um, and again, that will affect the productivity, like what we've discussed, and not only productivity but also the positive culture around the organization, right? And so that moves me to my last question. If you were to ask yourself a question that you can best answer, what would it be? And if you don't mind, sharing with us what will be the answer to that question, please feel free to do so.
Okay. Oh boy. Well, that question would be, how do you overcome past trauma to be your incredible self in all areas of your life?
Wow, that's a great question. And how would you answer that for us?
Sign up for my classes. No, yes and no. Yes, definitely sign up for my classes, but it would be actually based on the my formula that you shared earlier,
Mhm.
which is, applying situational awareness, and combining that with emotional intelligence to meet your intended outcome, because decisions are made off of emotions.
Exactly.
And if we don't take a moment to identify or to be aware of what situation we're in and really connect with how we're feeling in order to respond properly, um, you know, that's what dictates our outcome. So, the way to overcome the trauma is literally by conditioning your mind and how it copes with things. And I say things, but I mean trauma. And I'm here to say that it takes, 6 to 12 months to break a bad habit and only 28 days to create a new one. So if you can condition your mind 28 days repetitively doing the same thing over and over again on a positive, starting your day off with a positive mindset, being grateful throughout the day, reminding yourself who you are to the core and making sure that you're walking that to the core. So you're representing who you really believe the full ethical, wholesome, moralistic individual truly is, then you're going to be happy with who you are internally. And that's where your true happiness resides. It is internal. So if you can do that, 28 days is all it takes to create a new habit and condition new mindset. Apply it, do it, live it. And I'm a certified high performance coach by Brendan Bouchard. I'm not sure if you guys are
Oh,
familiar with
yeah.
who he is, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that leadership and senior leadership should definitely take one of his courses, or I'm certified, so you can take mine too. It's the same process, but I just again, I it's the new norm is going to be learning how to manage and lead people that have suffered from the past, 2 years of this trauma. This pandemic has been traumatizing for all of us in some capacity.
True, true. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I really appreciate you giving us a lot of tips, techniques, even with this very short interview in terms of not only in leadership, but really working on our highest potential, right? And
Yes,
that is what transformation is, I would say. So I
yes.
really appreciate you. Thank you so much, Garcia, for your time, for giving us this, I would say, very positive, intelligent, and nurturing conversation with you. And I would also like to appreciate all those who are watching us now and would watch us later on a replay. And I hope I didn't distract you with my Christmas attire today. It's already December 21 and we're 4 days away from Christmas. And so I'd like to, share that spirit as well with everyone. And again, the reason why we've been doing all this is we would like you to, everyone to join together in this journey to create more opportunity, to have, to have a better world around us, to be the happier and more fulfilling us, right? Fulfilled us, right? And like what you've said, the happiness resides in ourselves. So I thank you for that reminder. And with that, I'd like to leave everyone with this quote from Dolly Parton, that if your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. Thank you so much, A. Garcia, and thank you, everyone. Wishing everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We're not stopping with our interview despite the holidays. So watch out for our, I would say, our New Year special before New Year on December 28th with Paddy. Yeah, thank you so much, A. Garcia. I appreciate you and I wish you all the best, and looking forward to be working with you as well in helping more leaders to get
Thank
to their
you.
highest potential.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
happy them. Thank
Thank
you. Yes, and if if you have any questions for me or to A. Garcia, I'm just flashing my email address so that they would know where to reach us. So thank you so much. Happy holidays, everyone.
Be
Stay
safe.
safe.
Thank you.
Bye.